So, this is episode 1 of however many episodes I'm going to be making of this. I am not going to be promoting this in any of my Instagram pages. I am simply going to keep this kind of completely separate to everything I do. And I don't necessarily know where I want to take this channel. I've literally, my friend gave me this idea at the start of the week, and I thought to myself, okay, every Sunday I'll just dedicate an hour or up to an hour for me to think about a topic and just talk about it. And the reason why I called it the Unfiltered is because it's just kind of branching out of my TikTok page where I post just brainwash shit and I post some serious stuff. And the main driver of this YouTube channel actually comes off the back of one of the videos I made on there, where I made a 5.5 minute video talking about my experience of being an anxiously attached guy in a relationship or in relationships to now being secure and confident in myself, and how one simple mindset shift completely changed everything for me. And that video, bearing in mind it's TikTok. A lot of TikTok videos are like less than 30 seconds and have millions of views. Now this video is 5.5 minutes long, so it's slightly longer than usual. But I had so many people interact with it, so many conversations sparked from it, and so many people saving it. And also a few guys also messaging me saying, I really appreciate that video, because I really needed to hear that. And it really surprised me, because the previous other TikTok videos was just humor or stuff about my business or content in general, and they never performed that well. But the one time I talk about my own experience in something, all of a sudden people are like all on it, and I get it because it's relatable and it's very authentic. And my friend even mentioned it to me about how I find it very easy to get into deep conversations with strangers and with people I know. And part of that ability that I've acquired has been through working with my psychologist. Her name is Geraldine. I will link her page down below, and I'll also link her course down below as well. Now, to make things, what's the word? To set things clear, I'm not a qualified psychologist, I'm not a qualified therapist, none of that, but I do take a very great and deep interest in human psychology, in human behavior, body language, etc., trauma, triggers, anything in between. So if this podcast ends up, taking off, which I've got a funny feeling it could. It's a very niche area that I'm covering. So if anyone does feel like they could benefit with some psychology coaching, I will link Geraldine down below. However, she's very selective on who she works with. Her spots are quite limited. So yeah, I will link it down below just in case. And if you don't have the investment to invest in her one-to-one, you can always opt for her monthly course. Now, a bit about me. My name's Leandro. I was born in Portugal and I'm 25. I run my own creative agency within the fitness industry, and my business creates social media content for online coaches, PTs, bodybuilders, athletes of any sorts, gyms, supplement brands, fitness brands of any sorts again. I do the occasional work with commercial businesses, corporate businesses. I've done nightclubs in the past. I do weddings every now and then. And before doing that, I was doing social media marketing for a nightclub in Hereford. Hereford is where I live. It's a small town in the UK near the Welsh border. And prior to that, I was working in Currys for a year and a half. Prior to that, I was doing an apprenticeship in service engineering. And before that, I was just going through, the typical education system. So basically, that's a bit of a shortened version of my background. And the reason why, and here's the thing, like, I'm not planning any of these videos or any of these episodes. I've literally asked a few friends to pretty much give me a question for me to use it as a prompt, and I will just try and free for all it from there. I'm just gonna have a look and see. No, I haven't had anything. I've asked a few people. None of them have got back to me with anything, so I'm just gonna have to try and free for all this. So part of the reason as to why I wanted to do this channel is because I feel like a lot of guys between the ages of, maybe 16 to 25 who don't have a strong male or a strong father figure in their life greatly need a sense of direction and someone to essentially help them develop their frontal lobe, because our frontal lobes doesn't fully develop until we're 25. Now, you might be thinking, yeah, this is a bit hypocritical of you because you've just turned 25. Now, I understand that. However, I have invested a lot of time, effort, energy, and money towards developing my own mindset, breaking down my own limiting beliefs, and rewiring my brain and my own belief patterns that I feel like I am at not a great standpoint to help those with a similar upbringing to me, but I'd like to say I'm definitely further ahead than the average 25-year-old who has probably never invested in any type of psychology or therapy in their life. And kind of like a side project / business idea that I've had for a few years, and it's not really something I'd probably look into starting anytime soon, would be to do some sort of life coaching to some extent, where I work with, like I said, people of the ages from 16 to 25 and help them pretty much teach them on not doing the mistakes that I did, and maybe even changing the way that they believe certain things about themselves or about the world or about people, and giving them the guidance that their father was meant to give them but couldn't, because either A, they walked out of their lives, B, they probably weren't a very good male figure for them, C, they passed away. I personally have gone through my own experience of my dad passing away. He died when I was 11, and that, now bear with me when I say this, that was probably one of the worst but also the best things that have happened in my life. And the reason why I say that is because had that not happened, I feel like my life would be super, super different to how it is right now. I wouldn't be the man I am today, especially making this video, having even the conviction and the confidence to be able to say that I could help guys around my age do or make the correct life choices if it wasn't for the death of my dad. A lot of what I do on a day-to-day life has been shaped from that trauma, and it was very traumatic, as you can obviously imagine. But what was even more traumatic is the fact that I actually saw him die. A bit of a backstory to it is he used to play football every Thursday night, like a six-a-side thing, and he'd always ask me if I wanted to go and see him, and I'd always say no. And I kind of make this as a joke And the thing is about me is I've got very bad dark humor. Not very bad, very extreme dark humor. So I make very, very unhinged jokes. And I've always said to people, like, the one time I say yes, he decides to die. Now, of course, he doesn't decide to die, but it's just the way I word it. And I can literally replay how the night went as if it literally happened yesterday. And I do often get asked if I miss my dad, and it's a very tricky question, but also very simple, because I don't really think about him very much. And I guess that's sad in a sense, but it's also because it happened at such a young age that I've learned to accept to live my life for the rest of my life without him. I know that whether it's my private god, an entity, or even him, there is some element of his spirit looking down over me. And there have been many times where I've kind of set out an intention to my higher up for whatever reason, and it's always ended up happening in my favor. So whether it's him up there, whether it's some sort of spiritual being, someone's over there listening to my callings, and helping me out. So what would be a good topic to start off with? Because I have honestly got no idea where to start. Cool. I've probably spent almost 5 minutes trying to find a topic. I've literally just asked chat to give me some topics to talk about, plus some prompts. I'm telling you, like, I'm literally just making this up as I go. And yeah, so I'm going to talk about how I went from anxiously attached to secure or confident. Now, the whole spiel about attachment styles, my psychologist, her name's Geraldine, she doesn't like labeling them anxious attached, secure attached, avoidant attached, but I'm going to use it for the sake of this video. Now, in previous relationships, I was always anxiously attached, and I think the only time I was ever secure was probably my first relationship, which was 3 years, and potentially my second one, which is 1.5 years, and then it kind of just went downhill from there. I think my third one was 3 months. Fourth one was 4 months, and then my last one was 6 months. So what are the lessons I can get from it? Don't fall in love easily, and don't fucking wear the rose tinted glasses. As easy it is to say, it's hard to actually fucking do it in the moment. And the thing is, it's like, being anxious in a relationship, the reason why I think some people don't agree with labeling it is because it's not who you are, so to speak, but it's how the actions of the other person reflect your internal emotional state. And I have always generally been quite a confident guy, which is why I mentioned where I think I was secure in my first 2 relationships, and then it kind of flipped after my third one, because I think deep down I never had a very good sense of self-worth internally. I'd always think I'm never enough. I'd always push to do more in a relationship. I'd always, bend over backwards so much to try and impress, or to try and do something for my partner. And when it comes to being an anxiously attached person in a relationship, and this is for the guys mainly, because I guess it could be very similar to a woman. It's that from my perspective and my experience, it was the case of being too emotionally dependent and reliant on your partner responding to your messages. Now, a very good example would be I would send a message, good morning, how's your night, how's it been, la di da di da, and then whilst I know they're going to work, I know they're not going to be able to reply to me straight away. But if I don't hear them for 3 or 4 hours, I've then got a small voice in my head being like, they're not at work, they're cheating on you, or they're doing this, they're doing that, they're up to no good. And even though I've literally got no fucking reason to be thinking like that, that's what this anxious attached voice in my head is telling me. And I'm not going to mention names of like previous partners or anything, just to obviously protect their identity, and I don't want to be creating any fucking situations here. But there was one relationship where we had our location on for each other, like most couples would probably do. And over a period of time, I think, because the thing is, it wasn't through the Apple location, it was through Life 360. And if you've got Life 360, you can almost kind of micro track the movements. And what happened was, the concept behind it was, because it's so easy to micro analyze your partner's movements through Life 360, because it makes it so easy to be able to just see what they're doing. I started creating such an unhealthy habit of checking their location. Now, bearing in mind, I will say, with my hand on my chest, hand on my heart even, I have never once been a controlling boyfriend. I've never once said to a partner, you can do this, you can do that, you can't wear this, you can't wear that, because I'd keep it internally in my head, because I was trying to fight it. And I remember once she was going to work, but she was actually picking up a colleague, and I didn't know that. And it got to a point where my brain would literally make a map of how long it would take her to get from her house to work, what time she'd be leaving, what time she'd be arriving. And if it wasn't following that routine, the second something changed, my brain would be like, what's going on? Why is she going that way when she said she was going to work, this and that? And it got to a point where I was like, it was becoming so fucking unhealthy that I literally said to her, look, it's creating such an unhealthy habit, and it's not possessing any sort of benefit to me or to the relationship, so I had to delete it. And I think something like that definitely didn't help the anxious attachment within the relationship, because I was constantly worrying that she was up to no good, even though she never gave me a reason to. Now, looking back, I feel like this was built up on multiple things, and this would be as small as when we first started speaking. There was a few moments where she'd be out drinking with friends. Again, I've got no problem. I don't care if my partner goes out with their friends, because I'm not a fucking insecure guy. A lot of people do believe the traditional way of, they shouldn't be going out without you, this and that. Look, as a man, I know what I'm worth. I know what I bring to the table to a woman. I know that any woman who becomes my partner is going to be extremely lucky to have met me, because I am a one of one. There is no one else like me, and there will never be anyone else like me. So I'm confident with my partner going out with her friends and having a great time, because I know that she will respect the relationship that we have together, and she will remain loyal to me. But when I first started speaking to this particular person who I was in a relationship with, there was one moment or one time where she was out with her friends. I was going to bed and I just said, oh, have a good night. Let me know when you're back home, just so when I wake up I know you're home. And I didn't hear from her till fucking 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And the response was, oh, sorry, my phone ran out of battery. Or, oh, sorry, my phone ran out of data. And in the moment, when you are speaking to someone new, someone who you find attractive, you start to justify these little things. But what you don't realize is that over time, you're going to build this muscle in your brain of justifying actions. We'll call it you're going to start growing the justifying brain, the justifying muscle in your brain. And over time, it's obviously going to compound with the more you justify their actions, more and more and more and more, to a point where you'll look back in a relationship that you finished and you're like, why did I fucking let all of that slide? Why did I not speak up? And the reason why is probably because you're clinging on to that person in the relationship, and you're so scared to be on your own that you will sacrifice your inner state in order to keep them happy, in order to keep the relationship intact. But what real benefit are you actually going to get from making yourself feel smaller? What real benefit are you going to get from that? Why are you sacrificing your internal emotional state and well-being to keep someone else happy? Because, like Geraldine says to me, like, it's our first go in life and on earth. We've only got one chance to live a life. We don't have two. We don't have three. We've got one chance. We don't know how long that chance is going to last us. So why are we wasting it on justifying poor actions that our partners do? And so I turned a blind eye. And I want to say it happened a second time, but I can't remember. But that's when I started building the justifying muscle in my brain. And as much as I want to go into more detail of it, at the same time, I don't know how else to explain it without it kind of exposing who it is. Because, I want to keep my ex's identities a secret. Unless whoever's watching this knows who I am, then obviously they'll be able to know who I'm talking about from the very little amount of detail I'm trying to get into. But again, like I mentioned, I'm not going to be promoting this on anything. I'm literally going to allow YouTube algorithm to just send this out to anyone out there. So, moving on from that, and it's funny when I started realizing this, because this was not long after, or not long before, the lead up to us breaking up. And I noticed and I caught myself becoming way too emotionally dependent on how quick she would reply to my messages. By the way, very manly mug. And so it was probably the slowest and the hardest week of my life, because I was trying so hard, on fighting this inner conflict in my brain of everything is fine, nothing's going on. It is literally just my internal voice trying to fucking create these imaginary situations in my head. And probably the one thing I wish I did was actually speak to her about how I was doing internally. Because, again, that could have changed the course of the relationship. We probably would have still been together, but I'm not going to go down that path because I would become who I am today right now. And I'm grateful for how it went. I'm grateful for what's happened. And surprisingly, I don't hate her. I just hate the way it was handled. But that's a topic for another day, if it ever comes to that. And so, during this whole relationship, or coming out of it, I reflected on all my previous relationships. And I realized that there was one thing that I needed to do in order to have the sense of security and the sense of self-confidence I always knew I had, but didn't know how to tap into it. And that one thing was literally just knowing my self-worth. And it sounds easier done than said, which is true. But it's very hard for me to try and explain my self-worth in comparison to, your average 18 or 16 to 25-year-old guy who might not be running a business, might not be high up in their career. Because I've been running this business since I was 18 and I've been self-employed since I was 21. So pretty much most of my life I was building this business to a point where I can be full-time. But if there is anything that I could give out in terms of advice in order to really strengthen and solidify your sense of self-worth, there'd be two things that I would focus on and prioritize and invest in, and that's your physique and your mindset. Your physique, if you don't go to the gym, get to the fucking gym. As a man, you need to be fit and healthy. You don't need to have six-pack abs. Obviously, it would be ideal. It would be ideal. You don't have to have it. But let's not have some chub around your stomach. Want a big chest, flat stomach, broad shoulders. We want to look fucking good. Because it's not even from a sense of attractive girls, or women even. But it's also creating that internal validation that you have got the discipline to do hard shit week in, week out in order to have a very strong and elite physique. Because, and this is something I say to anyone who I meet on a dating app or anyone I meet in person, going to the gym consistently and having a good body is one of the highest forms of self-respect that you can have to yourself, because you're prioritizing your sleep, you're prioritizing your hydration, you're prioritizing eating clean and good nutritious meals, and going to the gym. Because going to the gym, not only does it build discipline, it also builds consistency and delayed gratification. And if you don't know what delayed gratification is building the habit of doing something over and over again and not seeing results straight away. A lot of people want things now. That's why there's so many fucking get rich quick schemes. That's why people put money into it, because they want to get rich quick now. Short-term wealth builds ego. Long-term wealth builds character. I'll say it again. Short-term wealth builds ego. Long-term wealth builds character. Write that down. Write that down, twin. And delayed gratification is probably one of the best things that anyone could build from a mental standpoint. Is learning to do things over and over again without seeing the results directly and straight away. And that's one of the things that the gym helps you do. Now, in terms of mindset, again, Geraldine, she comes at a premium price. But alternatively, you could invest in her course. If not, I would start looking at the type of content you're consuming online. Because our brains start thinking and behaving in different ways depending on the content that we're consuming. And if you're not consuming the right content, you're not going to think in the right ways. So instead of brain rotting, watching shit YouTube videos, start watching and listening to podcasts. Start reading books that are actually helpful and useful. Whether it's self-development, whether it's business books, whether it's finance books. Like you can see here, I've got a collection of books here. I've got some over there, my little bedside table. Just a few that I've got. The Concise Laws of Human Nature. I've got Diary of a CEO, Atomic Habits, The 10X Rule. I've got Happy Sexy Millionaire, which I'm currently reading again. How to Win Friends and Influence People. Rich Dad, Poor Dad. My coach recommended me The Chimp Paradox. So many books out there for you to read and consume. And if you don't want to read, get an audiobook. I personally prefer reading it because I like holding the physical book. And potentially even invest in a therapist. Because I feel like as a man, society tells us to just be tough, bottle our emotions and just carry on, keep on going. But as much as women favour a man who can deal with stress and not crumble underneath it, women also really, really desire a man who can be in touch with his soft side. And they desire a man who makes them feel safe, who makes them feel seen, makes them feel heard. And I generally think that a man who doesn't have any emotional intelligence simply cannot do that to the best of his ability. He could probably be understanding, but having the emotional bandwidth to create a safe environment, a comfortable environment where their partner can bring them a problem and they comfort them instead of being quite hard and very cold with their approach. I think for a woman that's quite priceless. And nowadays, emotional intelligence, I feel like, is a very rare trait or ability that guys have. It's almost like a superpower because of how rare it is. And therapy definitely helped me gain emotional intelligence, because when my dad died, that trauma, it shut down my emotions for 10 years. From the ages of 11 to 21, I was cold. I didn't know how to process my emotions. I didn't know how to communicate. And it took up until my third relationship, where we broke up. I was spending a week with my friends, and he just asked me, "Do you think you lack emotional intelligence?" And I said, "Yeah, I think I do." Bearing in mind, I've never heard of the word at the time. So, went on Google, typed in therapists near me, found one, worked with her for 2 years, and I really got my sense of emotions back. I got back in touch with it. I was able to cry. I was able to process my emotions. And I just started to become the person I knew I always was, but just didn't know how to reach it. And I spent some time away from therapy because I kind of got a bit stagnant in it, and she kept going over more my personal life, which is absolutely fine. She did an absolutely great job. But I needed help also in my professional side of life, with my business. I needed to get over limiting beliefs, break belief patterns within work, and being able to handle success and handle more work and do this, do that. And then that's when I started working with Geraldine. So going back to building your self-worth, focus on your fitness and focus on your mindset. And over time, you'll eventually start stacking a proof, an undeniable proof, that you are who you say you are. And I took that from Alex Hormozy. But it's true. This is why I said about, 10, 15 minutes ago, with such confidence that I know anyone who comes across me will be lucky. Because I know I am a one of a kind. I know that there is no other guy like me. There's no guy who has a lot of love to give, is very emotionally aware, very emotionally intelligent and mature, who is able to care for someone or for people around him to a very deep level. And being able to have the conviction to say that so confidently without feeling like I'm being cocky, because it's true, is what it feels like to really tap into knowing your self-worth. Because previously, if there was a cue in a conversation that would lead me to say that, I would probably stutter. I would definitely stutter. But because, with the help of Geraldine, the weekly calls, the hypnotherapy sessions we've had, she's really helped me rewire my brain and the way I see myself, and really believe and feel my self-worth. But not only that, but also be happy in being with my own company and being at peace with the stillness and the quiet of my own company. There are times where I'm like, you know what, I'd so happily just disappear to Bali for a bit and just be on my own. And that will happen. Just not right now. So, I haven't had any extra questions come through my phone, but we're coming up to about 45 minutes of me just talking away and free-for-alling it, which is fun. I'm kind of impressed that I managed to speak for this long. Hopefully, the next episode, I do have an actual prompt to go over. Now, these episodes, I honestly don't know how long they're going to be. I've literally said to myself, I'm literally going to put no pressure, no expectations. You know, some of these episodes might even be up to 5 minutes. Some of them might be longer. I'm simply just going to put minimal effort. And, you know, you could argue saying, no, you're never going to grow your channel like that. But who knows? Who knows? I've seen a lot of channels who are ultra successful and they don't even use a professional camera like I am. They just use a webcam. And they do so well. But the point of this video, the point of this channel, is not for it to make me successful, but it's to find the right people who need to hear these things that I am telling you. Because one thing that it is about being around me and speaking to me is that I will say what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. Because I feel like nowadays people are such snowflakes. They become so sensitive that hearing other people's opinions offends them. But that's not going to stop me. Because I will always tell people what they need to hear, because it's within their best interest in mind. So if at any point it feels like I've hit a nerve, good. Because it relates to you and it means something to you. Anyways, this is episode 1 of many, hopefully. We'll see how fucking consistent I can become with this. Let me know what you think of this episode. I'd be really intrigued to hear about it. And if there's any kind of particular topics you guys want me to go over, feel free to drop it in the comments below. And yeah, if you want to hear more of these episodes, make sure you subscribe. And stay tuned for the next episode.